What's poppin', y'all? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Weekly. I'm your host, Pee Wee the Plug, and Dejounte Murray is headed to the Atlanta Hawks. A lot of people was crazed by this trade. Feel like it came out of nowhere. As a Knicks fan, I am definitely saddened that he's not going to be coming to my Knicks team, but I gotta say, the Spurs got back a lot. I think a lot of people initially was like, what are the Spurs doing? This makes no sense. Dejounte is so good. He's so young. He's on a team-friendly deal. The Spurs literally have nothing. Nobody can wrap their head around it. But I'm here to somewhat defend the Spurs and to talk about the return that they got for Dejounte, which was Danilo Gallinari. You also got 4 first-round picks, 2 of them unprotected in 2025 and in 2027. You also have a 2026 swap and then a 2023 first-round pick via the Charlotte Hornets. That's a lot of picks. And I don't know if a lot of people truly understand how rare it is to get an unprotected pick, let alone 2. A lot of times we see, I don't care if it's top 1 protected, top 3 protected, there is very, very, very rare and few occasions when teams get picks with no protection. So for the Spurs to be able to get 2, and they opted to get them so far away, 2027, there's no telling how the Hawks will look, if we're just being honest. So for them to get those 2 unprotected picks and they be so far away, and then they get the swap, the choice of a swap in 2026, I really think the Spurs did a very, very good move. They put themselves in a position where they unloaded a player who I know it was hard to see him go, who I know it was hard for them to let go. But in reality, Dejounte Murray, as much as I like him, as much as I love him on the court and off the court, been watching the guy since Washington University, been one of my favorite players, and I know the Spurs really love him because he was another hidden gem for them that they picked up at the 29th pick years ago. I know it's hard for them to let him go. But with all of the good things and the upside that Dejounte still has and still brings to the table, the reality is Dejounte Murray wasn't a top 10 player or a top 15 or Kawhi level player that was really putting you in position to be on the verge of competing anytime soon. And you had to really take advantage of the situation you were in because the writings were on the wall. And the writings were Dejounte is reaching all-star level, all defensive first team. We're going to have to pay him a lot of money in 2 years. And in order for us to get the extreme value, we have to take advantage of him having multiple years left on his deal and the deal being team friendly. And to move away from Dejounte really finally puts us in a true rebuild situation because Dejounte is so good. They've been able to somewhat compete for playoff spots or to try to sneak into the playoffs. And that don't really put you in a position to have those top 5, top 3, or even top 1 picks. The Spurs have been dealing with 11th overall picks. They had the 9th one this year. They need to start pushing towards the 5th, 3, top 2 area instead of 11, 12, 13, wherever Devin Vassell was picked those years ago. They need to start cracking the top 5 in order to really have a rebuild. And a player of Dejounte Murray's caliber has not allowed them to truly do that. So they put themselves in a position to fully rebuild, fully commit to it, which is why they didn't bring back anybody like John Collins or no money that they was going to have to commit to on a long-term situation. You bring back Gallinari, he'll probably get bought out, and you now open up all of this time to give your young core that you have, or I don't want to even call it core, but your young players that you have. You just drafted 3 first-round talents. You have an abundance of guards. You let Dejounte go. Delonte Walker is probably going to be let go, and he's probably going to walk a free agency. And now you have Josh Primo, who they're high on. They took at 11. You have Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, who they just took. You have Jeremy Sohan now, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and you still have Jakopoto, who I would project or guess to be moved in this upcoming season. And you have 4 future first-round picks that aren't your own, plus your own. So now, hypothetically speaking, if the Spurs bottom out, which there is a high possibility that happens in the standings, and they now do crack a top 3, top 5, or even if they win the lottery, they now put themselves in a position to acquire a talent like Victor in the 2023 draft. And then you have all of the assets from the Atlanta Hawks. So if the Spurs strike gold this year, hypothetically speaking, because I know it's not a given, it's not as easy as just bottoming out and getting the first overall pick. But imagine if they got Vic and how that could kickstart their rebuild, plus everything that they got from Atlanta, the Spurs really, to me, did the good move or the best move as far as big picture and long term. Now, as far as the Atlanta Hawks, I love this move for them. They went out and got a guy that their star player was pushing for them to get, and this could be a guy who can unlock some things in their star player that we have yet to see. I think over the last couple of years, the Atlanta Hawks offense and their system has kind of got very predictable. It's kind of like Trae Young operates. We space around him and he goes to work, and he's going to either score, lob, or kick it out to a shooter, and we have to depend on these shooters to knock down these shots, or we have to pray that Trae Young is having a 30 and 15 night. If he's not, it's going to be tough for us to win and compete. And after making the Eastern Conference Finals 2 playoffs ago, I think there was pressure for this organization to kind of reach that height and take advantage of the moment that they were in of having that level of a competitive team while Trae Young is still on a deal that he was on. And this year being such a drop-off, I think they put pressure on themselves to try to make a dramatic move to really catapult them back into that situation that they can compete in the playoffs at a high level. And hopefully this does pan out for it. But I will say there is a world where the Hawks are better, but it ain't dramatically better. And now you gave up all of that draft capital, and Dejounte can hit free agency and, leave potentially. He can go find a better place for him, or you're going to be paying him $200 million, and it's him and Trae Young in this expensive-ass backcourt, and there's not a lot of wiggle room or other routes to go to make this team better. So I do think that this can be a win-win trade for both sides, but I do believe that there's a lot of pressure put on the Hawks to quickly trying to find some avenues or some routes to really build this team out the rest of this offseason to put them in a position to be able to compete quickly rather than later, because Dejounte has the 2 years, but you don't want to waste any of these years before you have to pay him that money, or before he could potentially walk out on you and go elsewhere and you gave up all of that draft capital. So it's going to be definitely interesting. I know that the Hawks still are trying to find moves for John Collins. I heard Kevin Huerter is potentially on the trading block, and we all heard the rumors over the past few weeks of Clint Capella being dangled around in trade situations or scenarios. So it's going to be interesting to see. I would love for the Hawks to continue to make some moves and put the right pieces around, because on paper, Trae Young, Dejounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Okongwu, you still have Bogdanovich coming off the bench. Some nice things going on around there. This is still some nice things, and I think that foundation is still exciting, and it still makes me feel like there's some hope for them. I think it's all about how they execute the rest of the offseason with John Collins and Kevin Huerter and potentially moving Clint Capella. But I do think this trade is going to be something that I'm going to have to wait to see play out, because, again, if the Spurs strike gold, whether it's this draft, whether it's 2024 draft, whether they hit in both drafts and it's the top 3 pick this year and they get the number 1 pick next year, if they get the number 1 pick this year and they get a top 5 pick next year, if they can hit gold like that and start acquiring high-level talent with the pieces that they already have, I don't know who's safe and who's not, and then the draft capital that they have from the Hawks, and also the cap flexibility that they're going to have to acquire more draft capital and more young talent while eating up some salaries from other competing teams. You see all the time teams have salaries that they don't want. Eric Gordon on the Rockets, John Wall just spent a year on the bench for the Rockets. You look around the league, there's always a contract that a team is trying to get rid of in order to position themselves to go acquire something else. And if the Spurs can open up to be that new team like OKC, to eat up a bad contract or to buy in a guy and then buy him out and then just get the draft return or whatever, they could position themselves to have a very, very quick rebuild that's going to have a lot of talent on the roster. I still like some of the pieces that they have right now, but I do think it poses the question of, did the Spurs win the trade? I really do think that. I know a lot of instant reactions was, wow, Dejounte Murray, how could the Spurs do it? But when you really sit back and think big picture and long term, do not sleep on this move for the Spurs, especially with the Spurs having the history that they have. And even if you look at the talent, Dejounte was a 29th pick. Keldon Johnson was a later pick. Devin Vassell, Josh Primo, Even this year to get Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, and Jeremy Sohan, I initially wasn't the biggest fan of it because I didn't know that they were going to trade Dejounte, and I'm like, why are you bringing in so many 6'5" guards? But now that you let go of Dejounte, and I guess Lonnie Walker is gone, you might as well bring in more guards. So I think the Spurs deserve a little bit more love for this trade than what they got. And like I said, for Spurs fans, I understand. To see Dejounte come into y'all system and to grow into the player he's developed into and to reach all-star status and overcome the ACL injury and everything, and after Kawhi left, he's what y'all held on to. I truly, truly get it. But remember, it's chess, not checkers. I think this was a really, really good chess move that I'm sure was hard for San Antonio to do. But to put yourself in a good position for the future of the franchise, I think this is a move that they had to make. You're not really going to find too many other trades or too many other situations where a team is able to get 2 unprotected first-round picks, especially so far away. I can't stress it enough. If 2027 come around and the Hawks ain't on shit for whatever reason, this trade is going to look back genius for the Spurs. This is how these trades always end up being. We look at players who we all love. I believe Dejounte Murray is a very beloved player in the basketball world and community because he's very, very good and talented. But we kind of put them up a little higher than what they really are. I think Dejounte is super, super valuable. But we have to understand, like I said, he's not a top 5, top 10, or top 15 player who's dragging you through the playoffs and putting you on the fringe of contention. So if you can get 4 first-round picks for him and 2 of them are unprotected for 5 years away, you do it, man. You do it, because there's no sense in wrapping up $200 million to Dejounte and all y'all doing is hitting the 8th seed or the 7th seed and getting 14th, 15th, 16th overall picks who are just going to be solid guys, but nobody franchise altering. So I like it for the Spurs. I like it for the Hawks. I think time will tell. Y'all let me know in the comments, did the Spurs win this trade? Do you still have the Hawks winning this trade? Are you like me, who's kind of like, we got to let this play out before we make a decision? Y'all let me know in the comments. Free agency is hours away, and it's about to be chaotic. I love it. Y'all strap in, get ready, because it's about to be a wild ride. I will see y'all next time on Pee Wee the Plug. This is NBA Weekly. I'm out. Peace.